City, South Dakota. As you know, Stephen and I came up for the Photographic Society of America, the Photo Festival 2021, and we have a lot going on. Our first guest tonight is J.R. Schnelzer. He is the Executive Vice President of the Photographic Society of America, and there may be changes because just like we do at the end of the year, we have our annual awards banquet and we change executive membership, and then everybody, executive board, I should say, and then everybody votes in for the different chairmen. Same thing happens up here at Photographic Society of America. So, hey, JR, how long have you been with the Photographic Society of America?
Well, this is a long story, but I'll make it short. In 1972, I joined PSA, very active for about 8 years, and then I wound up working for the National Park Service in the Grand Tetons. No service, no clubs, no nothing up there, so I dropped my membership. I rejoined in about 2000, so it's been about 21 years now, plus 8, way back.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I know I've done several of these events with you, so there's always great places to travel. What's your favorite place
To travel?
PSA has gone to do the
Oh,
event?
don't put me on the spot, Jerome, come on. We've been to many great places. I guess the most productive in terms of number of attendees was Yellowstone. It was great, you know, people love that area. But, you know, I love the Albuquerque Balloon Festival, we did it, and, you know, we've been so many great places, it's hard to pick one.
Yeah, actually, I remember Steve and I rode a balloon
Yeah.
that last year.
That was pretty great.
So where are you from?
Born and raised in Pittsburgh, moved obviously to Wyoming for the National Park Service. They moved me down to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, and I've been in Colorado since 1989, I guess, so home now is Colorado.
Okay, so if I'm coming to Colorado to visit, where's your favorite place to photograph there? Where would you take me?
Oh, it's a secret. I can't tell you that. Of course, since I was a park ranger in the Rocky Mountain National Park, we got some secret places there that I like and I really enjoy them. But all of Colorado, this time of year in September, the fall colors are happening, especially down around Telluride and Ouray. I shoot a lot of images. You saw some of them. I have one here that's out on the Pawnee National Grasslands, which is about 40 minutes from my house. And they're just such a diverse amount of landscapes and beautiful places to photograph.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite subject to photograph?
And again, I was classically trained black and white. I started, worked on my Master's of Fine Arts in Photography at Ohio State University. And that was a black and white traditional work. And I still do a lot of that. I don't use my 4x5 anymore, but I love landscape, I love nature, I like figure studies. And now that I'm doing so much traveling internationally, except for now that COVID's here, I do a little photo travel too.
Very good.
Yeah.
So I think last time, what were you just traveling last time I talked to you? You were international. So where's the last place you went?
China, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in China twice in 2019.
Very cool.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting. PSA it's Photographic Society of America. It's now called Photographic Society of America Worldwide. We have 80 countries who have members in PSA.
Yeah,
It's
great.
phenomenal.
Yeah, I was really bummed some of the international people I know couldn't make it here this year. So
And a lot of them were disappointed because they wanted to be here when I got in, took over as the president, and they're sad that they couldn't be here to share that time with me. But it's okay. We'll catch them up in Colorado Springs next year.
yes, that's right. Speaking about elections, so where are you going? You're vice president right now, but
I'll
you're
be the
making
president
transfer.
after Saturday evening at the banquet. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel?
Sometimes overwhelmed, sometimes excited, sometimes stupid.
I know all those feelings very well. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we've known each other for a while, and we understand each other pretty well, Jerome.
Oh yeah. Well, very good. So, what images do you have tonight?
Well, I have this image. This is a photo out on the Pawnee National Grasslands. I go out there as much as I can because it was an old homesteading area, people coming west during the 1800s. They farmed the land, they tried to farm the land and build these old cabins and homes, and they got, they were deserted over time, and many of them still exist.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me historically, but also I find beauty in these old, rustic old homes. And the other image that I want you to see or talk about is the flying car.
Oh, yes.
The future of cars. I have, even in my darker days, I did a lot of manipulation. Ansel Adams manipulated every image he ever had. People think, oh, those are straight images. That did not exist. So I've tried it and done it a lot in the darkroom. And when we got to the digital darkroom, I found out that things that would take me a half an hour to do, I can do in 2 minutes on the digital darkroom. So I still have a lot of fun playing with that and using my creative mind to say something like, what would this look like if I did it this way? And so I kept thinking, when I was a kid, we always heard about flying cars. And so I created this image to kind of represent what, many of us had hoped would occur by the time I'm an adult.
And that actually did pretty well at competition.
Yeah.
That's the international, right?
Yeah, that's the
And what did you get on that?
I think it was first place.
Very good.
I think.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but I think it was first place. Yeah, in creative. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So what is your equipment of choice that you're doing all this work with?
Well, I've used a lot. Like I said, when I was classically working on black and white, I was using a Sinar 4x5, and I've worked my way up. Right now, I am a Nikon shooter. I have a lot of Nikons. I have a D600 that I had converted to infrared. My main camera right now is a D850. I have a Z7 that I'm learning to use, and I have a D500 because of the smaller crop sensor when I'm using wildlife for my long lenses. So pretty broad-based amount of equipment.
Well, very good.
Yeah.
I know you were showing me one picture from the Badlands from this trip. That was from one of the tours out there?
No, we decided to come a few days early because I knew when the photo festival began, I was having no time to myself.
Correct.
So my wife and I decided that we would go to the Badlands, and we stayed in Cedar Pass cabins right in the Badlands for 3 days. And I do like to shoot astrophotography, the Milky Way, and so yeah, we got a couple nice shots there. I can make sure you have that too. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Hey, this was J.R. Schnelzer, and I really want to thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks, Jerome. It's always good to talk to you. Yeah, good to go.
Give us a few minutes, and we're going to have another guest here in just a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you. Hey, so here we are. We're back at the PSA event. Our next guest here is Patrick Murphy Racy. He was doing a program here. He's actually one of the evening speakers, one of the bigger speakers, sponsored by Sony. He was doing Capturing the Action. Patrick, you're a Sony artisan of imagery. From the program, I see you started in 1985, did a lot of newspaper stuff.
Newspapers, yep, first.
Then 92 to about 05, Sports Illustrated, shooting NFL, NBA, NHL, a little bit more.
And lots of other magazine work intermixed throughout all that, yeah.
Very good. So Sony obviously being your camera of choice. What's your favorite camera with Sony?
A1, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's whatever the latest one is, but I think A1's going to be different than all the other Sony cameras I've owned since like 2012, because I don't think they're going to make anything else that I'm going to want to buy in the next 4 or 5 years. I think I'm done for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard you in the program say they make one about like every 7 months.
It's like dog years.
Yeah.
I mean, the A7 III is like 30 years old now.
Yeah, I know. Between phones and cameras, and it's like everything just keeps going and going and going. Where's it stop?
Nobody ever talks about the Xperia phones. Sony makes the most awesome phones.
Yeah.
And they're making, their phones have literally their own imaging sensors per each lens.
Oh.
And they shoot 24 frames a second, do IAF, and you can even do Cinetone S, like
I
the
even
Venice
with the phone.
on the phone. I mean, and their top of the line one actually can act as a true 4K monitor for doing serious production work and video.
Yeah. Is that the phone you have?
I do have it, yeah.
So how often do you do a little phone?
It's awesome. What I use the phone primarily for is at sporting events. It's so fast to move images. I can move FTP directly to somebody's server
Right.
during the game, or I can do social media like instantly, and it's much faster than the iPhone. And the big thing is it will transfer images, and then if you leave it, like let's say it's halftime, and halftime is 25 minutes long, when you come back, the connection's still there. iPhone
Right.
keeps falling off, and it's just a pain in the butt, and Xperia just stays with you the whole time. It's really cool.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Also, I know this is your first time talking at PSA.
Yeah, I never even heard of the organization, but I'm so impressed by how many people participate and how they all are bound together by their love of photography. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really it's a cool group. I hope I get to come back again because it was really fun to just be able to kind of go on, out to the Badlands yesterday. I went and shot sunset with people, and
Yeah, I heard you jumped on a bus
I
there
just,
when
yeah,
I
I just
wanted
kind of
tours.
jumped on, man. Somebody didn't show up, and it was good for me.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Very good. Where do you live right now?
I live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've lived there since 1989. Love it there. It's beautiful. And, I mean, I love to ride a motorcycle, and I do whitewater kayaking, so it's kind of nirvana for both.
Very good. So if I was gonna come visit you, where's your favorite place to shoot in Tennessee?
Oh, man.
Where would you take me? That's the question.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of a magnet to Cades Cove. That's like a big, it's a loop road that's 11 miles long. It's right near the entrance to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park
Oh,
outside of Townsend, Tennessee. And they, one of the best things to do is to go to Cades Cove on a Saturday morning early, and they close it to car traffic until 10 a.m. You can ride a bicycle,
Oh, nice.
and there's no cars. It's great. So that's a really neat way to, if you want a mountain bike and have a backpack with camera. There's bear in there. There's wild turkeys. There's fox. There's tons of deer. There are
Yeah.
deer everywhere, and you can get really close to stuff. Although we never recommend getting close to bears
Oh,
for
yeah.
obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But that's
Actually,
it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And then there's so many places in the Smokies. A lot of people don't realize of all the national parks in the United States, the Great Smoky Mountain National Park is the most visited park. There's like 6 to 7 million a year.
Wow.
People going through there. So I always recommend two things. Don't go in the peak summer, and
Sure.
don't go on the weekend.
Yeah.
Go during the week, and it's very calm, and fall color is great. If you wait a little while into like late May, even at elevation, the wildflowers are coming up. It's just, there's the elk. They've reintroduced the elk there,
Yeah.
and they cross the creek every morning and every evening. I mean, it's just, you can really get some neat stuff there.
Very nice. So what is your favorite subject to photograph?
Football, American football.
Yeah.
Yep. I
And
mean, I absolutely love the game. It's, even though, the game happens between the whistles, we say, it's unpredictable. I love the bad weather games.
yeah.
And I love the rain games on real turf with mud. I mean, that is the best, because when people are slipping around, they make mistakes.
Right.
Mistakes make pictures.
Yeah.
And so I love shooting bad weather games. And also, the sideline's empty because all the wannabes and the yahoos are go away.
Yeah.
And then you can just work. So I love rain games. I know it sounds crazy, but I really enjoy shooting in the rain.
Very good. So what pictures you got today?
So there's just 4 here. The first one is of Pat Summit. She is the venerable coach of the Tennessee Lady Vols, who is, unfortunately, she's no longer with us.
Right.
She was struck kind of at the peak of her career with early onset dementia. And she's brought an enormous amount of awareness for Alzheimer's and early onset to the whole sporting community. And but the players that played under her, I think there's like 130 of them, I believe, over that's her tenure. They all talk about never wanting to be under Pat's stare,
Right.
and that she could, with one look, she could put you in your place, get you motivated, and get you paying attention, and get your mind right instantly, because it was such an intense look.
Yeah, so when you were doing this picture as a portrait of her,
Yes, yes.
and what made you shoot her the way you did this picture here?
Pat and I had a really good relationship, and this is really a neat story because I started shooting Pat in 1989 when I first showed up in Knoxville, and that year I went to the Final Four in New Orleans with the team, and they won, and I was there through the whole thing, and so that was, I was doing that for the newspaper, for the Knoxville News Sentinel. That's why I went to
Right.
work there. But by '92, I was of course freelancing for Sports Illustrated, and I was still in town. And so I had kind of carte blanche there. I could come and go to games whenever I wanted. I had strobes up in the catwalk, and she was very welcoming and kind, and not one time ever did she ever say no to me. So if ESPN, the magazine, called me and said, hey, we want you to get a picture of Pat driving to work in her Mercedes, I could just call her secretary, explain what I wanted, and they'd be like, yep, sure, what day do you want to do it, and I was in the car.
That's awesome.
When I did the Final Four stuff, I found out that Pat would always get a rub down and a massage every day when she was out of town. And I asked her one day, I said, hey Pat, is there any way I could shoot a massage? Sure, no problem, And so she's laying down, face down on the table, and like she's, bare naked except for a towel over her butt. And I'm in there shooting pictures, and she was just so wonderful to me, And so yeah, that was that picture of Pat that I'm showing was shot for ESPN for the ESPY when she won the ESPY award, which is their biggest award. And I wanted something really compelling, and she had these incredibly deep blue eyes. And sometimes she would ask me, hey, what should I wear? And I'd say, Pat, wear blue. It's not my standard answer, because she always wanted to wear orange. I'm like, it's not going to go with the blue. But sometimes she would, sometimes she wouldn't. But if I asked her to wear blue, she'd always wear blue. She was great.
Great picture,
Yeah,
great
thanks.
relationship,
Yeah. And relationships, photographers, I think it's more and more difficult nowadays for a photographer to get in a relationship with someone famous. We're kind of outside more. There's less kind of contact with people that are famous than there used to be. And so, therefore, there's less trust. And that's what I miss about Pat so much, is she trusted me. She knew I was never going to do her wrong or, whatever. She just knew if I was going to do a picture, it was going to be worth it,
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Cool. What you got next?
So this picture of Rick Pitino, that was my first ever cover of Sports Illustrated. And I remember I was traveling through Atlanta Airport, and I was running from one plane to another to get home. And I ran by a newsstand in the airport, and I saw Rick Pitino on, they had all these SI covers all lined up inside. And I was running to catch his flight, and I was like, I gotta look, because I'd shot him the week before. And what was confusing to me is the cover's background was blue. But what I didn't know is that Sports Illustrated always considers the cover of the magazine to be advertising.
Right.
It's kind of a little controversial, but what they would do is I had shot Rick Pitino in Kentucky at Mississippi State, which is like kind of a maroon color. And so I thought, well, it can't be mine because it's not maroon in the background. And so I went inside and I opened the magazine and I looked, and it was my credit. And that's when I realized they actually took my picture and they colorized the background to look blue, even though it was at Mississippi State. So great secret, probably nobody knows. But and then I remember doing the stupidest thing. I was so excited, I'd never had a cover before. And so I went up to this girl who was at the checkout counter, and I pulled out my driver's license. And I was like, she's like, sir, you don't need a driver's license to buy the magazine. She probably thought I was a dork. I'm like, no, look here. And I showed her, I opened the cover and I showed her the name. And then I showed her my driver's license. I had to tell somebody. I was so pumped. I just knew what it meant to have a cover of SI. And it was a big deal. So I bought 5 and went home.
How long had you been working for SI by the time that cover came out?
That was in '96, so I've been working for 4 years. So, yeah.
And about how many covers do you have now?
4. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
No, it's tough.
And I want to be honest, with your viewers. I was always a B team photographer. I was
Yeah.
never on the A team. I never went to the Olympics. I never went to the Super Bowl. There were much more talented shooters than me, but I was a bread and butter guy. Like
Yeah.
whatever they called me to do, whether it was horse racing, NASCAR, portrait, basketball with the strobes, football, I could do anything they threw at me.
Yeah.
And it was nice for them to have me, and I was in the southeastern U.S., which was also handy. So,
Yeah.
but
That's one thing I was listening to you about also in your program. You were talking about how, a portrait photographer back then was just portraits,
Yep.
or a race photographer was just
you
racing.
really got typecast.
And I always struggle with that with work because I like to do a couple of things.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And sometimes you want to be over here doing this, but you have to do that to make money. And
Right.
sometimes it didn't work out with me,
That's
So
right.
I would do other things,
Yeah.
And even through the 90s, I struggled a lot through the 90s, but I was fortunate that I molded myself to everything. So I was lucky enough to be sponsored by Kodak for a while, so
Cool.
I was getting film, and that was good, and
Yeah.
they were using my studio for programs. And then when everything started to turn digital, the first chips went into a Nikon and a Canon,
Right.
and so
Right.
then I had Nikon and Canon both in my studios, and then everything was revolving so fast, and I wasn't clicking to, evolve with it.
Yeah.
And so I started doing studio rental. And I was
Okay,
literally
okay.
bidding, I was doing a lot of food stuff. I shot 4x5
Yeah.
in the late 80s, early 90s, and doing a lot of food stuff for the hotels. And I remember that, I would bid on a job because Vegas was changing at that time also, going from, the stigma they had turning so much
Right.
corporate.
Sure.
And the corporations were bringing people from LA and from New York.
Mhm.
And I was bidding on these jobs, $5,000, $10,000, and not getting them, but I was turning around renting out my studio for $5,000 for that photographer.
To
So
come
I
in,
still
yeah.
stayed in there, and that's
Right.
kind of how I made it through the changes
right.
and to move on. Very good. So what we got next?
Let's see. The next picture is a football picture, which is it's just a big, it's a pass reception, a big long throw, and for me, this picture is so much about. When I look at this picture, I immediately remember the very first few months of shooting the A9 at games, and just I knew what I was experiencing was special.
Right.
And I knew that what I was experiencing, everyone else, all the other photographers in the field would experience at some point in the future. But I was doing it right now, and I was by myself. And so this picture is kind of cool because, John Beaver is the great football photographer from SI. He always went everywhere with one camera on his neck with a 50mm lens, and he would pre-focus it at 25 feet and then put a piece of gaff tape on it. And we used to call it the oh shit camera. It's the oh shit, because you can't prepare for that long play or whatever it is. And this became, the A9 with a 55-1.8 Zeiss lens on it became the autofocus version of John Beaver's 50mm around the neck camera, and it was absolutely bulletproof. You couldn't miss.
Yeah.
It was impossible. And so this picture is special to me because I think the original series has 11 frames of the ball in the air. So the ball is just coming in at 20 frames a second into his hands. And it's literally the first time I was editing, and I'm going, man, which one do I choose? Because I'm used to choosing the picture, because there's
Right.
obviously which one was the picture. And with the A9 at 20 frames a second, it's like, well, there's lots of the pictures. Which one is the best? And you have to kind of go through but just having, being able to shoot wide open at 32,000th of a second
Yeah.
is something I could never do before. 8,000 was always the limit,
Sure.
and then A9 broke so many barriers for sports photographers, just left and right, everything's broken.
Yeah.
And so the A9 to me is just, even though I use the A1s now exclusively, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for the A9 because it was the camera that changed everything overnight,
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we got one more.
Yeah, the last one is of Nadal from the U.S. Open, and it just, the U.S. Open is I don't want to ever complain because the US Open is a lot of things. It is an amazing American experience. New York City, I mean, you take the subway to get there and you're with all these people and they're all tennis fans. The event itself is something I always wanted to do. I'd never covered it, and I finally got to go. It's so oriented towards kids and like bringing the next generation up. They're so focused on that. And I just thought, this is so different from like the NFL or, you know, like it's all about drinking beer and like, you know, pretty girls. This is like really legit, like pure sport, you know. And then, you know, Nadal and Federer, I mean, they're both there. And I got to photograph them. And one thing that's difficult with the US Open, and again, I'm not trying to complain,
Right.
but there's all these ball people, there's all these ball boys, and they're all different ages, they're from all over the country, you know, all over the world. And they are always in the background of pictures. And so what you're always looking for, like when you shoot the Olympics, you want the rings, right? You want the rings in the background, the rings in the foreground, just to show it's the Olympics. And at the US Open, you want the US Open logo and the player.
Right.
But it's so hard to get that to all line up perfectly because the players are literally all over the place. And the peak moment when they hit the ball, and then not having the judge back there, so obviously it's just a little piece of them.
Sure.
That's all there is.
Yep.
And then it's US Open, and then you got the fuzz coming off the ball.
Yeah, that's
It's like
right.
every time those guys at that level, every time they hit the ball, there's just a big fuzz. I mean, every time. It's just, so the power, Nadal, you know, like to see the structure of the muscles in his arms and his neck, and I mean, it's just, that was like over the top for me. It was
Right.
a great experience, and I really walked away, when I had this picture, I knew it, and I was like, well, I can go home right now, and I'm good. I didn't, but I knew I could, so.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So capturing the action was your program, and this is mostly sports here that we've
Yeah.
well, it's all sports that we've looked
Yeah.
at, but also you've got some wildlife stuff coming up, some birding.
Yes,
stuff coming up.
my friend Ron Madra is he had a tenure at Sports Illustrated that lasted 40 years. And Ron's got 70 covers to my 4. And Ron grew up in Wisconsin, so we have this kind of tie because I went to school up there and worked at the Journal. And we've known each other for a very, very long time. But Ron is much smarter than I am. He's older and wiser. And he made the decision to get out of sports photography quite a long time ago, about 6 or 7 years ago. And he immediately started looking at nature and wildlife and like landscape. And he's really addicted now. And he called me about a year ago and said, hey, look, man, I want to come over. He lives in Nashville and part of the year. And he said, can you meet me at the Great Smoky Mountain National Park? Meet me for lunch. I want to talk to you. And I said, sure. And then I met him and we had a nice lunch, and he talked to me about how he really wanted to do workshops, and he was so passionate about what he was doing, but that he wasn't real great with technical stuff. And he's only shot Nikon his whole life, didn't know anything about Canon, didn't know anything about Sony. He said, man, I need somebody that can come in and really help all the participants with whatever they're doing.
Right.
And by the way, Ron shoots Sony now. He traded in his 600 f4 Nikon and got the 2:6 Sony,
Yeah.
and is just happy as a lark. So, but and so we kind of made this deal in partnership. And our very first workshop that we're offering together is literally, it starts on the 24th of this month, and it's fall in the Smokies, fall color in the Smokies.
Very nice.
So it's going to be a landscape workshop. And then after that, we're going to be doing a workshop in April on the Rosette Spoonbills down in St. Augustine, Florida. That's going to be a 3-day workshop. And we may do 3 days and then have a new group come in and do 3 more days. So we're down there for 6. But we really like that. We think that's going to be a powerful experience. And then the next thing we're going to be doing is Galapagos. We have 2 different trips, 2 different date ranges for a week a
Yeah.
pop. And I've never been.
That sounds amazing.
Ron's been down there 5 times, so he's got it wired. He knows boat captains, he knows all these naturalists, all these people that'll come with us. And what's a little unique about our workshop is that we are land-based and not boat-based. So Geographic goes down there and you're on a boat the whole time. You don't get to get off. And we get to get off all the time and actually walk and creep around, lay on the ground and shoot the turtles and all that stuff. So Ron's really got a neat kind of, I can't wait to go and to experience it myself. And then finally, probably in July of 22, I'm very passionate about, I ride a motorcycle a lot. And I ride about 15,000 miles a year on a bike. And I love running up in Labrador in Canada, which is the easternmost province of Canada. Nobody goes there. There's literally like 40,000 people in a land area that's about half the size of the United States.
Yeah.
And there's like moose everywhere, but that workshop's gonna be about the icebergs, and it's gonna be about the puffins, and I'm blowing my mind here. Icebergs, puffins, and what? Oh my gosh, I'm just brain farting, man, I'm so tired.
That's okay.
Iceberg, puffins, and, whales.
Okay.
So let me do that again. So we're excited. We think it's possible, very doable to offer a workshop that would include seeing whales, like breaches and things like that, puffins, and icebergs, real icebergs that float around up there.
I've never been up in that area. So
It is
it's like,
awesome.
Yeah.
It is awesome. You don't want to get a flat tire up there. I'll tell you, you're in the middle of nowhere.
No
Yeah.
AAA?
Yeah, no. And then what we're gonna do is, again, we'll do the Fall Smokies workshop again, and we're gonna probably do all the workshops I just mentioned annually. That's kind of our
Yeah,
plan.
sure. Very good.
Yeah.
So, all that aside,
Mhm.
if you, no money, and money didn't matter anything, and you were gonna travel somewhere, where's your dream location to go travel to?
Man. Boy, that's a tough one. One of the areas that I have had the great pleasure of visiting in the summertime, I want to make sure I put that up, is the Nordic countries. So Sweden and Norway and Denmark, the Netherlands. These are pristine, beautiful, out-of-the-way places in the summertime that are just like the air is so clean, the sea, there's water everywhere, there's all these islands, fjords. I mean, it's just, there's all these natural springs that are coming and flowing into the ocean. I mean, it's just, that part of the world is really calls to me.
Yeah.
And I have to say, even though I haven't been there yet, I'm pretty dang excited about Galapagos. Because everybody that goes to Galapagos pretty much says the same thing, that it's like nothing else.
Right, right.
And I have a feeling that Galapagos is probably going to be in my top 3, like pretty instantly. Do I need to do anything over? Okay. But I think for me, those 2 areas would be, they're pretty special, And then Alaska on a motorcycle is amazing. I mean, I've been up there, and it's just, when you go up there on your own, you got there and ride and all that, it's spectacular.
Beautiful. Hey, really appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me.
Yes, thank you.
It's been
It was
great.
great. I loved watching your program tonight. It was
Oh.
great to meet you this week, and everything's
you.
been amazing.